Hello and welcome, and in today's video I'm going to be showing you the top 10 best arc travel mounts, so let's get straight into it. In at number 10 I've decided to put the Rock Drake, as I find this is actually quite an effective creature for travel if you utilize it on the right maps. Yes, it doesn't fit into every situation where you may want this thing, but to be honest, if you get one and you use it for travel, especially on Aberration, it's like your only choice really on that map without any kind of transfers of things like Bloodstalkers and Maywings and all of that. It is really going to do a lot of good service on that map, and it really does do you some good service on some other maps as well, like Gen 1 2 if you want to bring it over, and especially maps with a lot of things just like big objects everywhere for this creature to hold on to, because it's not particularly great with loads of flat terrain. I wouldn't bring it on the island of course, but still you can get quite a lot of leeway out of this creature even in some flatter environments. I'm using it in one here and I still did get across this place pretty quickly while also recording the B-roll, so it went pretty smoothly in my opinion, and it is definitely a very nice, fast, reasonably great travel mount. There's also got a load of great attacking abilities as well, which just help it along the way. Next up on the list, I've decided to put the Pteranodon, as I really do like this as a general flyer. I think it has a lot going for it, especially considering the level that you actually unlock this thing. It's sort of insane what you can get out of this creature. It's a little bit absurd, to be honest, the level on which this creature is actually unlocked, as you would expect it to be unlocked way later into everything. But honestly, for level 38 saddle, this is one of the best flyers or just travel mounts in general that you can get, and I think nothing really else can compete with it, unless you're obviously on Gen 1 and Aberration, where you simply can't use Pteranodons. But you know, we're going to exclude those for the time being, as the majority of maps do allow flyers, and for all of those, which is obviously most of them, you're going to have a very good time with this mount. They're quick and easy to tame. You can simply do it with a bowler. You'll have no issues whatsoever. At least I haven't. The only real difficulty is getting that saddle, as you know, that chitin and keratin can be a little bit of a nuisance to get sometimes, but apart from that, it's totally fine. Continuing on the list, I've decided to put the Crystal Wyvern, as I find this is an effective mount just generally for all of that flying. Yes, you can use normal wyverns as well, but I just prefer the Crystal Wyvern. It's not necessarily that they're better in terms of a travel perspective, but I do vastly prefer the taming of these creatures. It's much easier. You only need to be level 60, which can be simply done with a note run, and then you knock out one of these things to get some primal crystal, and then passive tame one. My favorite is the Blood Crystal Wyvern. Comment down what your favorite is, as I definitely like to know, because you know, we all have a favorite wyvern I think at the end of the day, unless you've never used them before, especially in the Crystal Wyverns I find, because their abilities are just so cool. The Ember Crystal Wyvern is one which is quite highly rated too. It has the same speed, mobility and rubbish turning circle as a normal wyvern, but they are really effective travel mounts, being like some of the fastest flyers in the game. I'm not including gliding abilities into that factor, just straight flying. The wyverns are some of the fastest out there, so they really do deserve this spot in my opinion, as I feel like, you know, they can be used quite effectively for a lot of travel scenarios. Coming up in the number 7 spot is the Snow Owl. This is the first glider, quote unquote, apart from the Rock Drake that we've had on the list. And this is one where I find it is a really effective traveler. It is a basic knockout tame, and you'll have no issues with that whatsoever. You simply need to head over to the Snow Biome on Extinction, and I think they spawn on Fjorda as well, so if you don't have Extinction, hop over to there and I think you'll find them on that map. They obviously have that sort of dive bomb ability like the Griffin. The Griffin isn't on this list, but I'll give it a brief honorable mention. You could slot it in the same spot as the Snow Owl. They are quite similar when it comes to traveling abilities. It's just the Snow Owl is my preferred creature. I find them a little bit easier to tame, and I like some of their other abilities along with it, but obviously they're very quick flyers because of that dive bomb ability. Also feel it's a little bit more fluid than the one that the Griffin's got. That's probably merely a placebo, but we'll go with it. They also do have a kind of heat-seeking UV ability sort of thing, where you can go around and scout out all kinds of just organisms that give off heat. That can be used in whatever scenario you may need to apply it to. It sort of acts as night vision as well in some cases. Then obviously they can heal up creatures. You just need to level up their stamina more if you want to heal those creatures up for longer. If you're wondering why you can't heal creatures up for longer, it's because you need more stamina, so get that stamina cranky, and then you can heal some creatures for serious lengths of time and really get them healed up. It's great if you're just taming something and then its health is really low, like you've been training it for ages. You can simply heal it with one of these things and it's back up to scratch. The Daedon can't do that because it can only heal up your own creatures. And obviously Snow Owl pellets are going to be extremely useful if you're feeding scratches. You can get some insane loot. Next up, I've decided to put the Astradelphis, as I find this is a really effective speed mount. If you want to get somewhere really quickly, the Astradelphis or the Triple-Ignatus, I'm kind of going to tag team them together because they are quite similar as creatures. Then you're going to want one of these two. The Astradelphis is just my favourite though, so that's why I'm putting it here instead. They can dash across the map with insane speed, and that isn't even accounting for obviously any speed leveling that you may do, because you can't on these things like you can't on all flyers unless you enable it, but you can get some insane speed on these things totally like on official settings, and that is absurd. The only reason why you go for a Tropio, in my opinion, over the Astradelphis is your taming method is slightly less expensive. The maps that it spawns on tend to be better, and obviously the saddles are not at a way lower level. But apart from that, the Astradelphis really does take the crown, in my opinion, for just being such a great travel mount. It can travel with such great speed and agility. It really is an effective mount for all of that. It's just like a dog fighter, but in Ark, essentially. In at number 5, I've got to put the Rhinognatha. This is obviously a very recent addition to Ark, but it really has influenced a lot of great traveling, at least from me, and especially because you can pick up things like Diplos and Rexes and Parasitotheriums. It's absurd what this creature can really do. It's sort of insane, really. It's like, honestly, mind-boggling from a person like me who's been playing Ark for absolutely ages. It's crazy how the game really progresses. I'm definitely here for it, even though I wasn't really when this creature first came out. It's obviously quite a rare one. You find it on the island in the Lost Islands. It's very accessible to all you players out there because obviously it spawns on just the main map of the game. And sadly, it's the swamp biome, makes the swamp biome even more dangerous. But when it comes to speed and agility, the Rhinognatha really just does have it. It can go with so much give. It's insane, really. You can fly for tremendous distances without really using up any stamina, and their weight is great. You can carry a lot with you, and you can travel with great speed too, which is something which sort of matters at the end of the day. So let's just continue on the list, shall we? Next up, I'm putting the Desmodus. This creature is truly an effective mount. It is a great glider, and it really has done a lot for me in terms of travel. It has the Sanguine Elixir as well, which is an absolute cheat for Tames. I started a bit done like that with a click of a button. You'll have no issues whatsoever, or seemingly no issues whatsoever with the taming. You know, you never know what's going to happen. You could just get something like one of those ants just tear your tame to bits and ruin all of its effectiveness. That's annoying. Has that happened to you before? Comment that down below because I want to know. Again, it's got the same gliding ability as the Griffin and the Snow Owl. It really is just such a nice thing for a flyer to have, and this really does utilize it very effectively. I like how it uses the gliding ability. It feels very smooth, even smoother than the Snow Owl's one, and I do prefer it as a travel mount. They're also only spawn on Fiorda, like I think the Snow Owl, again, it does spawn on Fiorda too, but if you are on that map, I would rather go for this creature than the Snow Owl. It's just more useful in terms of all of its other abilities for me as a PvE player, and I just prefer its general agility. In at number 3, I've decided to put the RG because this has been here for absolutely ages, and it is a go-to for me. Yes, while maybe not the fastest and most agile mount out there, I have done most of my traveling in Ark with simply this creature and this creature alone. I really do love it. Yes, nostalgia does play into it, but considering it spawns on the island and it is just so effective for metal gathering and more transportation. Actually, the Dodic and the Yankees will be doing that, and it can pick those up too. You can also pick up berries, so if ever I was going to a cave, I could just pick a berry of this thing. This is pre-cryopod days, if you are wondering. Now I usually just would cryo up my berry, or soul traps really, because I use that mod instead. Yes, I use mods because I love them. The game is definitely better with them, at least from my perspective. They also can travel very long distances, considering their stamina is great. Their weight is also up to quite a high standard, and I really do like that. And obviously with the weight reduction, it's 50% on things like metal, crystal, and obsidian, which is why they're just such great metal haulers. They also have a portable smithy as a saddle, so you can do anything you do in the smithy in the LG saddle. So if you want to repair your armor after a cave run, let's say, you can, because those pesky autoclers at some point probably are going to get it, and that's something which you really don't want to happen. They also have a nice, neat regen buff too, and I think that really does play into the essence of these creatures just being so versatile, but also great travel mounts. In number 2, I've got to put the Bloodstalker, because for any underwater travel, this is my go-to, and I love it to absolute bits. It is actually insane how much I've been using the Bloodstalker as of late, but also just for general travel on the land as well, it is really effective. You're essentially a living Spider-Man. Its damage is also not to be underestimated. Yes, you're not going to be fighting any bosses with this thing, but you still can kill quite a fair few amount of creatures. They can obviously skate along the top of the water, and you can see all of the aggros of the creatures around you. So if a quick escape is needed, you can always go to the top of the water and skate away at lightning speeds, while also being able to see what creatures are actually aggroed onto you. This helps in a very low visibility environment like the ocean biome. I find that just to be really effective, and it just helps me in a way. Yes, I have the awesome Spyglass mod as well, but I don't need to really press anything for this to happen. It's just instant, and I could leave my awesome Spyglass on all the time, but frankly I wouldn't really want to do that. I only use it when I'm taming things. But obviously then when you hop out of the water, you've still got yourself an absolutely insane travel mount, and then you can be that real Spider-Man energy with you just slinging across the whole map. It's an insane creature for all things travel, and that is basically all I use it for, especially underwater travel. It's my all-time favorite underwater mount, and there is really no competition for this for me. That is my opinion. Let's get into number 1 spot, shall we? And in number 1, I've decided to put the Maywing, as I really do love this creature as a travel mount, and it is unbeaten ever since its release. This has been my go-to travel mount for everything apart from underwater travel. Although this is actually still a very decent underwater mount, and it can skate along the top of the water like the Bloodstalker 2. The Bloodstalker simply does a better job in that regard, but if I quickly need to dip in for something, the Maywing will definitely do the job with absolute ease. The saddle is unlocked at level 18, which is insanely early, so you can be getting these things basically as soon as possible. I think they spawn on Fjorda as well, but I usually go to Gen 2 to tame those things because I have the DLC and I just know they're there. Never tame one on Fjorda, but I think I've heard at some point that they have been on the map. I really am extremely unknowledgeable with Fjorda. Actually, I should probably look up all the creatures that are on that map and then converse with you in future top 10 videos. Either way, these things act as a portable feeding trough too, which is just absurd. It's a really nice ability for them to have. The animation is disturbing, but we'll stick with it. And they can gather berries too, but the main reason why they're such good gliders, because you might say, well, they're just the same as the rock drake really, but you can really get a lot more agility out of these things than the rock drake, and you don't need very you don't need a big difference in terrain elevation to get these things to actually fly far. The top 10 best art transporters. In at number 10, I've decided to put the gas bags, as I really do like this as a creature concept, especially when it comes to all things transporting. This does have a lot going for it in that sort of niche, let's say. It is a reasonably fast and effective creature for getting around the map with some serious speed, and it has a lot of heft to it when it comes to weight, and that is a key part of transporters. And obviously the speed does apply quite well too, but this has sort of the best of both worlds. The only reason why it's not particularly high on the list is they can be an absolute pain to tame with them glitching all over the place, and on top of that as well, they can take a little bit of getting used to in terms of flying these things for the first time. I definitely didn't have the best time while recording this B-roll, because it was a couple months back when I really didn't fly these things a lot. I think it was a good 6 months back actually when I recorded this. At some point I'll redo this and probably show off some better gas bag flying skills. That's definitely something to consider though. You can bring a friend along with you, which, it makes it nicer. They've just got tons of weight though. You'll have no trouble transporting metal and goods like that around the map with these things. Next up, I've decided to put the Pteranodon, as this is just one of those creatures where it's like, you really can't get away with not having one of these to a degree. Yes, it is just really unlocked early on, and that is a great use for it as a early game transporter. This had it was unlocked at level 38, but soon after you do get things which are a lot better, which is why I am going to knock this creature back a little bit. That is why I've knocked this creature back a little bit, but it still does have a lot of merit in transportation, not only from you, but it can get some things around too, like some other players and some resources if you're careful about the weight, which isn't really that great on this thing. It's so much more spread across Arch maps than the gas bags that I find it simply has to be a better transporter. It's got more access and you unlock it way earlier on. Its tame method is way simpler, simply just a bowler and some tranks. So it's another good transporter, but maybe look for something else if you're at a higher level. Next up, I've decided to put the Snow Owl, and this is one of those creatures where it has the gliding ability. Is very easy to tame. It spawns on Fjorda as well as Extinction, so don't get too miffed about the map. Not sure about the gas bags actually, but I think that might have a Fjorda appearance somewhere along the lines. But yeah, this is mainly an Extinction creature. I usually tame it on Extinction, but you can do it on Fjorda too. It has the gliding ability, which really does just boost it as a transporter. It adds just so much speed and agility to this creature, although it can't dive bomb attack like the Griffin, which is later on in today's list. It still can do quite a lot when it comes to traveling quickly. It may not seem like a very fast flyer just going around normally. It's only slightly faster than RG, at least from just observations that I've done. When you do this, it is just such a great flyer and transporter just for all goods. Its weight is very decent too, so is its stamina, and it's got loads of other wide uses too, like this sort of UV. I mean, no, it'll be no, it won't be UV because wrong ray. I'm thinking infrared. There we go. That's heat. UV is that's too high on the electromagnetic spectrum. Sorry, not physics lesson we want here. Either way, back to Ark. Talking about stamina too, they've got tons of it, and that is great, especially for healing up creatures, because the more stamina they have, the longer they can heal for. Their pellets are also great with gachas, and that is just something which I really like about these creatures, and I really like them as a whole. Great transporters, easy to tame, and got some other uses along with them too. In at number 7, I've decided to put the Desmodus. This is one of those creatures where it spawns on Fjorda, and there is a lot going for it other than its transporting abilities, like Sanguine Elixir and the Blood Bag Farms. Just absolutely fantastic ability to have. But again, it has that gliding ability like the Snow Owl. It may not appear to be the fastest flyer right off the bat, although definitely faster than the Snow Owl in general flying. That glide sort of dive bomb thing, which the Griffin also has, again we will get onto that later, it really does make this thing an even better flyer. But it has a lot of agility and mobility in some other areas too, like the fact that it can grapple onto any kind of wall or vertical surface with absolute ease, even ceilings actually. Just make sure not to press space after you do this. I mean E, not space, because you will fall off your mount, and I'm sure someone's done it before. Just don't make that mistake. Continuing on, I've decided to put the Bloodstalkers. This is my all-time favourite underwater travelling mount as a whole. I love it for all of its underwater travelling needs. At least from my perspective, it really does excel in this aspect. It is a truly remarkable tame for everything like that, but also on the surface too, it really is a great one. But let's talk about why it's so good in the water first. Firstly, actually, not to do with the water, it can glide along the top of the water, and although it's not going to be in the water at the time, it can offer some quick escapes at points where you may need it most. You can also see all the aggros of the creatures around you in a low visibility environment such as the ocean. This is going to be an extremely helpful one, at least it is for me. I'm not blind or anything, but you know, it just helps to know if the creatures are actually aggro onto you or they're just being, you know, as they are, just sort of NPC things just wandering around and giving you no business or attention whatsoever. But then as soon as you hop out of the water, which is extremely mobile and diverse, and you've got all of that extremely mobile diverse mobility on land as well, and that is going to hugely benefit it as a creature, and I really love all of its mobility. It deals a reasonable amount of damage too, which people don't give it enough credit for. You are essentially just Ark's version of Spider-Man, and that is also just really really cool. In at number 5, I've decided to put the Astrodelphis and the Tropignathus as a little mention here as well, as I really do love these two creatures as transporters. They can get a lot of goods from A to B, especially considering their ridiculously fast speed. The only thing that really does hold them back is fuel is required for this to actually work, and they can be a little bit of a pain to tame. Yes, the both of them. The Astrodelphis, I would say, is maybe slightly harder, definitely more expensive, and the saddle is something which you're going to be spending a lot more time getting up to, but you know, it's still not really the end of the world with a creature like this. You can get quite a significant amount done in terms of, you know, traveling around, and also you can get quite a significant amount done in terms of taming these things, especially on Gen 2, as Element is like absolutely everywhere. You can get tons of it in the space biome, you'll have no issues whatsoever. So on that map, they're relatively cheap. I think you can get them on Fiorda as well. They definitely do suit the map nicely. I like them for all of that. They are really great creatures, they're really fast. Just be careful about those requirements, because that's probably the only thing that's really going to be holding you back when using a creature like this one. Now, in number 4, I've decided to put the Griffin. Maybe you want to see it higher, but for me, this is where I put it in terms of transporters. It has the dive bomb ability, which can deal tons of damage, sort of as it suggests in a way, but that really does attribute it to being quite a nice flyer. This isn't its default speed, by the way. It's been sped up quite a lot here, as I had this really insanely movement speed cranked Griffin, because yes, I use speed levels, I'm that kind of person, and I really love a fast Griffin. It can get a lot done for me, but even at basic speeds, with that dive bomb, you just get an insane amount of acceleration. It actually really is absurd what you're getting of a creature like this, and in just general PvP terms, they are great PvP creatures. But for PvE use as well, they're one which many players do attribute to some of the best. They are truly great in my opinion. Also for doing Wyvern trench runs, you're going to have no issues with using something like this. For dealing damage, you're going to have no issues with using something like this. And for transporting goods around the map, considering their great weight and general overall stamina and speed, you're going to have no issues with that whatsoever. In at number 3, I've decided to put the Argent, as I find it's just been in the game for a while, okay? Maybe you think the Griffin is a better transporter, but when it comes to things like Metal, Crystal and Obsidian, little can beat the RG. It has been in the game for so long, and it has been carrying it ever since its release. While maybe there's some other creatures, and obviously evidently better creatures for transportation than the RG, considering the creatures which are higher on the list, it's only making the number 3 spot. Still very good. I think this is where it really does need to be, for the factor of how much is just done over all of Arc, and the fact you get 50% weight reduction on things like Metal, Crystal and Obsidian. It's still an insane thing to me. Yes, I might be still a little bit stuck in the primitive age, but I think it really does deserve a lot more than it's getting these days. I love the RG for all that it offers. Its saddle acts as a portable smithy. You've got a nice regen buff. It can pick up tons of creatures and transport them around the map with genuine ease. You're going to find no issue with using this creature as a transporter. While it may not be the fastest out there, that isn't what it needs to be a good transporter. It can carry hefty loads with absolute ease, and you can get around the place, maybe not in the most timely fashion, but you'll get there safely and reasonably efficiently with a lot of stuff with you. In number 2, I was really thinking about this one, but I'm going to put the Rhino here because it is a very fast, effective flyer, obviously spawning on the island and the Lost Island, but the fact that it can pick up so many kinds of creatures really does make it such a great transporter in my opinion, and this is why it really does take the cake for me in the number 2 spot. I was thinking put the RG a little bit higher, but I think considering this thing can pick up Rexes, Diplos and Paraceratheriums, it really does just deserve to be here for a great Arc transporter, because at the end of the day, if you can pick up creatures like that, it has to be one of the greats. And yes, cryos exist, and obviously soul traps if you use that mod as well. I do, because cryos frankly are just way more annoying than the soul traps mod. Comment down below if you use that mod as well, by the way. I'd like to know how many other people out there are using said soul traps mod. But yeah, considering it can pick up that wide range of creatures I think it is extremely deserving of the spot. It is a very fast travel mount too. It is capable of gaining significant speed on it, and it deals quite a hefty amount of damage too. Great for PvP and PvE uses. Its tame method is just exactly the same as the Reaper's really. I won't go into it in this video because it could be a little bit of a drag. Let's get into the creature in at the number 1 spot. And finally, in at number 1, I've decided to put the Maywing, as I really do like this as a general creature in its concept, but also really, is it beaten when it comes to general travel mounts? The Maywing has just such an insane amount of speed to it. I think it really is unbeaten when it comes to transporters. Maybe it doesn't have the highest weight out there, but it can transport any kind of baby of any size along with it, which is something which can't be said about the Rhinogonatha. It can about the Gigantoraptor, but that is not making the list today. I think all the creatures here do definitely succeed that in terms of transporting ability. So you can do all of that, but you can still get quite a lot around with you with like relative ease and across a very long distance in a very short amount of time, because again, Maywings are really the kings of travel when it comes to it. On flat terrain, they are absolute beasts at it. Maybe not going very vertical, but still a lot can be done with these things. They also act as a portable feeding trough. They're pretty good swimmers, and they can gather berries. There's so much going for these things, but in my opinion, they take the cake for the best travel mounts in Ark, and I don't really think anytime soon that is going to be changing. And give it up for our patrons, Ekaterina Puchkova and Karina Thorne, Dominic Maciejewski, sorry about that name, and everyone else that's on this list. All the people I've mentioned are paid members, and if you feel like that's something you want a shout out at the end of the video, go join the Patreon or become a paid YouTube member.